is Manali Jain and I'm going to show how I did my CMPE281 midterm. This is the diagram for the exam where we have elastic cache Redis on a private network and a private MySQL RDS. On top of it, we have a private EC2 instance with two Gumball APIs having it with internal load balancer. And then we have a public EC2 instance with Kong API and Cassandra. And then we have a local Docker host where we run our Node.js application to connect to all this. So let's start with the Redis. So as this is the elastic cache Redis that I have created with the security group, it has exposed 6379 ports on the private subnets, and the one port and the one IPv4 CDR value is for Jumpbox to connect to it. Second, and similarly for MySQL RDS, we have a VPC of CMPE281 with all the 4 subnets, out of which these 2 subnets have the IPv4 CIDR value, which are the private subnets. So here you can see the subnets. So these subnets are having 1 and 3 as the private subnets. They are in different availability zone, and these 2 are the public subnets. So this is the IPv4 CIDR which I am using for my Jumpbox to connect to all private instances. So now to log in into my MySQL, after you create the MySQL RDS, you get an endpoint, and to log it in from Jumpbox, you use this command. I created the database, load the data, and then to log into RDS, I have the Redis. I have the Redis endpoint and the key and the commands to get the keys. The second step on top of it is to create a private network. So what I did is I made the changes in the Gumball code because I have to deploy it on the Gumball Go API as a container on Docker. So we need to make the change in Go Gumball API to connect it to Redis and MySQL. So the code that we need to change is the MySQL connect and Redis connect variable, where we have given the endpoint for their connection and the user and the password for MySQL. Now first, we need to have the 2 private instances up and running in the AWS. For that, what I did is I already have 2 AMIs. One is a private AMI which has Docker installed into it, and one is a public AMI which I use for the Jumpbox. It also has Docker installed into it. So from this 2 AMI, I launched 2 Gumball instances, Gumball 1 and Gumball 2. So this Gumball 1 and Gumball 2 will be used as a contain will be used where we deploy our Gumball API as a container. So here you can see that this is my Jumpbox Elastic IP. From here I use the SSH to log in into my private roots of both the Gumball 1 and Gumball 2. So before doing all this stuff, first we need to have the image ready and pushed onto Docker Hub to get it pulled onto the private instances. So for this, I perform this step. On my local Docker host, I start the Docker, and then I build the commands for Docker. So this command sudo system start Docker will be used for the Gumball 1 and Gumball 2 private. This is written wrong over here, so it's Gumball 2. So this sudo system start Docker command will be used to start the Docker on the private instances, EC2 instances, and these commands are for the local ones. So on local, what I did is build the Gumball application, tag it with my name, push it to my Docker Hub, and then I'll come to my Jumpbox. From my Jumpbox, I'll log in into my first private instance, do a sudo docker run there with exposed port 3000 and 3000. We exposed it because internal load balancer has to connect to the Gumball API on the exposed external 3000 port. So this is how I run the Docker container for Gumball API on my Gumball private instances. Second, the next step which we need to do is to do the internal elastic load balancer to create it. So for that, what we have is the 8080 post exposed. So while creating the internal load balancer, I give the inbound rule as 8080 port with subnet IPv4 CDR as 10.0.0.24, because from Jumpbox we can be able to call the internal load balancer. We can log into the shell of, we can from the Jumpbox we can call it, not from Jumpbox, if from the instances we can call it from, so you can see that the Kong will call it from 8080 port to the internal load balancer. So I mapped, this is the first security group I defined, and then while creating the load balancer, you have an option to map the external port to the internal uh, to the to the instances that are running. So we need to map it to 3000. So 8080 is mapped to 3000 to connect with the Gumball. Now we have, when we create the attach the two instances to ELB, we have to wait for some time to get them in service. So I'll show how, where is my ELB. So this is my elastic load balancer. In this elastic load balancer, you can see that there are two instances in service and they are in different availability zone. Now if you could see the descriptions, I have provided two availability zones for the load balancer, and then I have the security group defined on it where I have exposed the port 8080, and then when you when you want to connect to the Gumball Go API, it will go from the load balancer. So this is the step for it. Now there are some curl commands which we can run to see that whether the load balancer is working as expected or not. So what we can do is we can curl the load balance curl with the internal load balancer on 8080 and ping it whether it's working or not, and then we can run another command to connect it to Gumball and see whether it's working or not. So when you run all these curl commands, you'll see that after running it in MySQL and Kong, you will see that okay, there are some keys which are getting created when you do a Gumball order and when you process a Gumball order. So this shows that our internal load balancer is working correctly and connecting to the Go API to update the Redis in MySQL. So this layer is now completed. We proceeded to the next step, that is create a public EC2 instance. We already have it because we have Jumpbox on it, and now we have to do install the Kong API and Cassandra containers on Docker. So with this, so the private, sorry, so the instances that I have right now is Gumball, they are private, and this one is public, that is the Kong Cassandra Jumpbox. So we already have Docker installed on it. So first we need to have create a network because we want the Kong and the Cassandra to be in one network. And then what we do is we can inspect the network by this command and see whether how many container it has. Now to install Cassandra, what we do is to docker pull Cassandra and then docker run. For the Kong commands, we do is docker pull Kong and then docker run. And now with ps-a, docker ps-a, we can see that okay, the Docker and Cassandra are up and running. If you want to test it whether the Kong is working with everything with the internal load balancer and Gumball API, first we need to add the register the Kong with the internal load balancer API. So for this we run some commands. First from the Jumpbox we log in into the Kong bash, and then we had a command for add API where we provided the upstream URL which has internal load balancer endpoint and the port which is export which is the exported port for the internal load balancer. And then the other commands that which we need to register the Kong API with the internal load balancer are API key authentication to add the client. So the client here is my name Manali, and then we generate the key out of it. So the key generated out of it will be the key which we used as an API key for further communication. We can see here the curl commands with Jumpbox EC2 instance. So I can directly ping it from here. So I can directly ping it from the Jumpbox and can see whether it's working, the two bottom layers are working or not. So let's do a ping. So here this is a ping curl minus x get. So this IP is the IP of my elastic IP of my public EC2 instance. With this curl I can see whether it's working or not. Then I can do a Gumball curl command to get all the Gumballs with my elastic IP. So here I can see that from this third stage I can connect to internal load balancer, Gumball and elastic redis and private cache. So and then we can get an order curl posted and then provide the API key. So this is the API key which I get from here when I generate it. So this is how my all three layers are working. The screenshots for all this command and output is being submitted to the midterm exam, and then after seeing it, on top of it we see that okay, we have a local Docker host which has a Node.js application running on it, which is running on port 8080. So what we do is, first on our local Docker, so this is how it looks. So on this local Docker you can see that so I have this Node.js application where I made the necessary changes to connect to my Kong. So you can see that the changes that I did is to update my IP address for the Kong API. And the no docker.js command is to build the Node.js application and to run it. So this is how I did it. So first I build the Node.js application and then I run it, and I can see that my Node.js midterm container ID is up and running. So from here we can see that from 8080, so it's our local Docker host. From 8080 we can connect on a browser, and then the flow will flow from Node.js to Kong to ELB to Gumball and connecting with the to Redis and MySQL. So let's show how it's working. So it's like, so it's been up for some time, so I need to, because it has a session value in it, I need to refresh it. So it has no coin right now. We insert quarter, it has coin, and we turn crank. Then it says that the order ID is placed and the status is order placed. So this is how the Gumball application works. Um, so I'm gonna show right now the call commands which I did for my the call commands for the Kong API and everything. So these are the ones. So this is the call command where when we are configuring the key API, the key of plugin, the add client and generate key. The same is like here, and then this is how we are getting accessing the Kong with the API key. We are accessing from the Jumbox EC2 container and then are running it, and we can see we are getting the data as expected. This is how I did my whole midterm exam. Thank you.